Welcome to Backpass with Ras, and this is an interesting episode. It's been a long time actually since we did an episode where we spoke about a certain club or we reminisced about something about football in the 90s and the noughties. And this is a follow-up to one of our recent posts where we posted about the Confederations Cup and our good friends in Malaysia, the Bola Bola Show, the guy, actually the main guy right now, the man leading Bola Bola Show, Mr. Sivan John, he reached out to me and said, hey, how about we do a collaborative episode? And that is also something that's long overdue. We've not done something collaboratively in a long time. So without further ado, let me introduce the man from across the border, Sivan John. How are you doing, Sivan?
Hey
Long time.
Russ, hey Russ, thank you so much. Thanks for having me and thanks for taking on the idea of doing a collaborative show. I think the Confederation Cup is quite a very interesting topic. Something I think we never really focused on. I mean, we did a lot of focus on many major tournaments that took place in the 90s and the noughties. So I
Yeah.
think Confederation Cup is one of those areas we never really touched upon. And I think timing is right because as we speak right now, it's probably about a year before the next World Cup, which is
Yeah.
how often the Confederation Cup normally is held. It's held as a dress rehearsal for the host nation before the real major tournament takes place.
Mm. We, of course, in this episode, we reel off the different Confederations Cup that took place in the 90s and the noughties. But this is we'll make this like a bit of a conversational episode. So we'll go with the flow. And so speaking about the Confederations Cup as well, I mean, there's a good point that you brought it up about it being should have been now, but it's been discontinued for a number of years now. I can't remember when was the last time they had a Confederations Cup. But the first time we heard about it. In fact, when I heard about it, I was actually quite excited because normally it happens at a time where there's no World Cup, there's no European Championships. It might happen right after the Copa America, so we would have had a bit of football to tide by after the end of the European football season, before the start of the new European season as well. So a bit of football in between. And it's always exciting when you have all the different nations coming together to play in a mini kind of a tournament, not as big as the World Cup. But then in those days, we get excitement from this. We got to see all the different nations playing. But nowadays, I don't know about you, Steven, but nowadays you kind of feel like you get tired watching football. You feel like, oh, there's just too much going on. What do you think? What's your opinion on that?
Well, try not to sound like an old man because obviously, if you and I, we come from an era of generation where having this curiosity about and this mysterious feeling about countries that don't
Yeah.
often take part in international football. We grew up in an era whereby when it comes to national teams like England, Italy, Argentina, Brazil, you more or less already have an idea what to expect or what can we find, what we will know about them. But when you have countries like, say, maybe I can give an example, like in 1994, when Bolivia qualified for the World Cup,
Yeah.
or when Saudi Arabia
Saudi
qualified, or
Arabia,
in 98, maybe Jamaica, or maybe
Japan.
Japan. It's always a bit of that mysterious feeling that you. So basically, if you look at it today, you have the internet, the social media, and all that, and you have a lot of people who are kind of like a subject matter experts on all these various countries and their respective football. So even before the tournament kicks off, you kind of like know already like 60-70% of the team. And it's only when the tournament starts, only then only you start to have a much better feeling how they play and all that. So to some extent, I have to agree with you, lah. The that curiosity, that mysterious feeling that we had back then has kind of reduced. I wouldn't say disappear, but it's kind of no longer there, lah.
That is true. Yeah, that's kind of true. But it's also, you see, nowadays, I guess there's another narrative that's been going on. The index comes from the players, from the managers, that they're playing too many games. Everyone's complaining, oh, we got too many games, we're so tired. And that plays in your mind, that, oh my
Yep.
God, the players are so tired. They're so, that's why the quality of football isn't so good. You're not seeing them at their best because they're so tired. And it just plays in your mind that they're so tired. And when we talk about this Confederations Cup, you look at when they played these tournaments as well, it's a bit crazy, but we
Mhm.
never ever heard this kind of issues that the players were too tired, they had too many games. Do
Yep.
you agree that nowadays there are too many games for players to play in?
Absolutely. I think if you look at the stats, the numbers, especially when you think of players that are earning number of caps and number of goals they are scoring, to some extent, you ask yourself, are they really good or is it because they're playing too many games? I give a
Mm,
classic example as you look at who is the all-time goal scorer for France national team, Oliver Giroud. Now, I'm not saying that he's not a good player or anything, but the fact that because he came from an era where he had opportunity to play many games, score many goals, compared to probably players like before him, like those players who have more quality, your Thierry Henry, your Michel Platini, all those era strike players, where they didn't have a very structural FIFA football calendar, which enables them to focus on their club and even go take part in international football. There was no such thing as FIFA international window, whereby clubs have an obligation to release players to go and play for their national team. Back then, it was very vague. Clubs can afford to try to convince the player not to go, and there won't be any repercussion out of it if the player says, you know what, okay, I'm going to stick with my club and not take part in this kind of take part in maybe a meaningless friendly or not so demanding football competition. Yeah.
mm, okay. And now let's start with the our conversation on the Confederations Cup. It started as the known as the King Fahd Cup back in 1992. My memories for this tournament wouldn't be so early. It'll be a bit later, but perhaps you have some memories related to this tournament.
No, not at all, Russ. To be honest, I
Okay.
wasn't even aware that there's such tournament taking place in '92.
Yeah, true,
I
true.
I look at it. It took place in October, so I'm not too sure whether the news at that time had any room for this football tournament. Maybe there was a bit in pieces of news highlights and all that, but I don't think we had a very extensive coverage as what I would
Yeah,
expect we have today.
yeah.
So when I look at the tournament, it was just a four team tournament. It didn't even have the European champion, obviously, because if you look at it, the timing was somewhere in middle of October, which the
Mm,
European season would have started. So definitely, Europe will have their own matters to deal with, World Cup qualifiers and European football season and all that. So it was just between four countries, four confederation, and it was a straight knockout tournament, which of course Argentina won. I suppose with Argentina taking part, it gave the tournament a bit of credibility in
Which are
terms
the other
of
countries?
you had okay. The host was the Saudi because
Okay.
I think they're the one who initiated this idea. I think it was more of a diplomatic and something like a celebration of all these various champions. So they decided to have this tournament organized. It
Mm,
wasn't yet endorsed by FIFA at that time. So
mm,
the other countries they managed to invite was Ivory Coast, the Cup of Nation winners in '92, and
okay.
USA team, who was the '91 CONCACAF Gold Cup champion. So it
Okay.
was just between these four confederation. There was no representative from Europe and neither from Oceania.
Oceania.
So
Okay.
yeah. So it was just very straightforward. Just two teams play each other in the semi-final and then final and third place, which Argentina won convincingly. And probably the main takeaway from this is the fact that Argentina was going through a bit of a long unbeaten streak following after winning the Copa America a year earlier, and the introduction of a certain player called Fernando Redondo, who became the Golden Ball winner, the MVP of this tournament.
Okay. Did Argentina feel a very strong team?
So yeah, if you look at it, there was Batistuta, Diego Simeone, quite a strong team because it was more or less the team that won the Copa America. Bear in mind,
Mm,
South American football at that time is not like the qualifiers that we know today.
okay.
So they need any international football competition, whether it's on an invitation basis like this, they will definitely take part and they will definitely want to take a bit serious because they need to prepare the team for the World Cup and for the World Cup qualifier.
Mm, okay. Moving on, the next one was in 1995. This is something I researched on before our show today, so watching it on YouTube as well was quite interesting. Again, the King Fahd Cup, again in Saudi Arabia. But this was when was this? This was in January, I believe. This tournament was in January. This time there are more nations taking part. Denmark was in there. So there's the European champions. They were in there, the defending European champions. Argentina was still in there. Saudi, of course, as the host. And I believe Japan was there as well.
Yeah. Japan. There were 6 teams. I think the only confederation that did not send a representative was Oceania.
Okay.
Otherwise, more or less, you have all the other representatives there.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, Denmark won it. That's their, I don't know whether they would consider this as their second international honor after winning the Euros in 92.
Yeah,
But
I would say they should consider it. Lah. I mean, of course, you are competing against other national teams.
yeah,
I think it was kind of, how do I say, especially for Michael Ladroff, he didn't take part in
yeah,
'92.
yeah,
So this was, in a way, a good, another addition to an impressive CV, lah, especially winning something for his country.
yeah. So the Laudrup brothers were together, but there was no Peter Schmeichel in this team.
Mhm.
Apparently, he was injured. Not too sure whether that's really true or Sir Alex pulled something.
Mhm.
But that's what happened. Your memories? Do you have much memories from this tournament?
I didn't get to watch any highlights or anything, but I remember reading about this in the newspaper.
Okay.
I mean, you could say is my first ever introduction to what is the Confederation Cup, of course, at that time known as the King Fahd Cup. Lah. What
Yeah.
this whole competition is all about. At the time, I was trying to figure out what is this all about. Then only I learned and understand that this is a tournament that whereby, you know, involves teams that have won all the respective confederations, their respective major titles. And no surprisingly, the final was between Denmark and Argentina.
Yeah.
Although I'm not too sure whether you're aware that they're in the group stage, Denmark, they were together with Mexico and Saudi Arabia. Both they managed to beat Saudi on the same goal, and I think they drew together. So they had to go through a penalty to determine who's going to play in the final, which Denmark won, by the way.
Against Mexico?
Yes.
Wow, interesting. That one I didn't know. That was something that wasn't shown in the YouTube clip. But yeah, that's certainly an interesting part of that tournament. But certainly, I know from what I've heard or I've seen, I believe Denmark were the deserving champions because I heard they played well in the final and they won it. So now moving on to 1997. 1997 is the first time ever that I've heard of this tournament, and this is the first time it became known as the FIFA Confederations Cup. It was again held in Saudi Arabia, but what was special about this tournament for me was Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
I think Brazil was just outstanding.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the tournament, but you're following it on in the newspaper, as reading about it, and from the description in the newspaper itself, you can imagine how good Brazil played in the tournament. They went all the way to the final. Australia had a very good tournament, making it to the final. If I'm not wrong, they beat Brazil or they held Brazil to a draw in the group stage. They were both together.
They held Brazil to a in a draw in a group stage.
Uh, So there you go. And they went all the way to the final. I believe one of my previous guests, must have played in this tournament or was in the squad in this tournament.
Mm-hmm.
An Australian player. His name beats me right now. I'll try and remember it. But yeah, I remember the Romario Ronaldo pairing was devastating. 6-0 win in the final. Very comprehensive win. But that pairing was just devastating.
Yeah.
And this one again was held in January, so in the middle of the European season
Oh,
for
December.
December. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure whether that was at a period where the European clubs had already started their their winter break, which allowed these players to go and play in this tournament.
If you
Uh,
look at the representative of the nations that took part,
yeah.
Europe was not represented by Germany. Germany, despite winning the Euro, did not take part in this. So Czech Republic came in as representation
Uh,
from Europe.
okay. Okay.
And quite a few teams in this competition actually, I think maybe they would have taken things a bit seriously because they know for a fact they're not going to take part in the World Cup. I think
Mhm.
Uruguay was one of them. Uruguay didn't qualify, United Arab Emirates, and of course Australia. I think in a way it's a consolation for Australia lah, after the quite a heartbreaking exit in the playoff against Iran.
Iran, yeah.
So I think maybe that's why they gave it all in this tournament to go all
Was
the
this
way to the
after
final.
that or before that?
I think it was after that. I got a feeling it was after that. Yeah.
Okay. So my guess was Ernie Tapai. He was in that squad.
Mm-hmm.
He played in the tournament, and he was in his interview. He was telling me about how it was like playing against Roberto Carlos and how fast they are on the pitch. They're like on a different level completely to the Australian players,
Mm-hmm.
and what he's used to playing in Singapore and in
Yep.
Australia. The level is just so many miles away from what it is in this part of the world. So you can imagine. I mean, it's already a very great experience for players like that to be involved in this tournament. And
Yep.
I believe also during the course of this tournament, there's only one hotel, and all the teams stayed in that one hotel. So they
Mm-hmm.
had a chance to mingle and meet the
Mm-hmm.
players as well, which is another great experience because of course the Brazilian players were all superstars back then, and I mean I'm not saying the Brazilian players today are not superstars, but they were at a different level in those years compared to now. And for people like the Australian team and maybe United Arab Emirates and Saudi players to meet these guys would be awestruck. They should be awestruck meeting all
Yep.
these players.
Yep.
Any other memories you have? Or any other interesting facts and snippets you got to share?
I mean, we only had the chance to watch the final alone. Other than that,
Oh, is it? Okay.
there was no coverage in terms of live telecast or live games. I mean, of course, we hear it in the newspaper, we watch it through the news highlights and all that. But surprisingly, they did show the final. I remember watching the final, and it was a 6-0 win. As you mentioned,
Oh,
both Romario and Ronaldo, both each bagging a hat trick. Quite a very, I would say, it's a very dominant performance by Brazil, even though I think Australia could have had a bit of a ego confidence after managed to drew them in the group stage. But in the final, I think Brazil were definitely a class above, displayed their true class and what was expected from them in the World Cup. And I think it's also the beginning of Brazil's sort of like dominance in this tournament, because this will be the first of many they will start to win in the years to come.
yeah. And this was actually, you are right. Did tournament happen after Australia's heartbreaking elimination at the hands of Iran? Because that happened in November. This happened in a month later in December.
Mm-hmm.
So some consolation indeed. And as for the Brazil team as well, this tournament it was in December, and then at the end of the year in June, July they had there was the Le Tournoi de France where Brazil, Italy, England, and France took part in a
Mm-hmm.
pre-World Cup tournament to test out the stadiums
Mm-hmm.
in France. So that's also an interesting one because the later on this tournament, the Confederations Cup became a pre-tournament precursor, so
Mm-hmm.
to speak. And there was in '97 this tournament, Le Tournoi, where they played in this tournament, and it was quite exciting. I don't know you remember watching that tournament or not, but it's quite exciting. The matches quite open. There were a lot of goals, a lot of draws, but also 2-2 draws, 3-3 draws, not like, nil-nils and boring football. And the teams really gave it a good go.
If
And
I'm not mistaken, England won the overall tournament,
yeah,
right?
England won the
Yeah.
overall tournament.
Yeah, I remember that game, and of course, that is a tournament where Roberto Carlos scored his
Yeah,
very
famous free
famous
kick.
free kick, lah. Yeah,
Yes.
because those days, I think before the Confederation Cup became the World Cup rehearsal, I think each of the host nation they had their own sort of their own tournament. I remember USA had the US Cup in
Oh,
'93,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Correct,
and
correct.
France
Right.
had this tournament. So it used to be a 4 nation tournament like that
The
before they
US
decide.
Cup actually was like, you said in 93, I think they had it in 92, 91. I think in the years leading up. So like almost every year leading
Yep.
up to 94, USA 94, they had a US Cup.
Yep. I mean, it's just basically the US version of what we have in Malaysia, the Pesta Bola Merdeka lah, the Merdeka
Mm.
Football Festival,
Mm.
annual tournament. We invite teams to come and take part, and basically this was a different time. This is how national teams are able to use a certain platform to test themselves against teams from other regions. Yeah.
Mm. And speaking about the Ronaldo Romario partnership again, we saw them at the Letonoa also very good because I didn't get to watch the Confederations Cup in '97. So all my knowledge and information that I received was from the newspaper or the teletext.
Mm-hmm.
And to see them in that Letonoa, wow, they were devastating. So going into World Cup '98, I was really afraid about Brazil's prospect, of these two guys playing up front for Brazil. I felt this team was better than the one that won in '94. So they were odds-on favorite to win it. But unfortunately, Romario got injured and he missed the '98 World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on from this,
Just,
'97,
just, just another important, just another interesting fact. The Uruguay team that took part in this Confederation Cup because they
mm,
won the nine. I think they took part because they were winners of the Copa America in '95.
yeah,
Even though
yeah,
Brazil won the
I
Copa
remember.
America in '97, but I think since they also were the reigning world champion, so I think they allocated the South American slot to Uruguay for being a winner of a previous
But
edition.
I think they won it. Wasn't the Copa America later in the year in '97?
Oh no, no,
Like
Copa America
what
usually
was
takes
before?
place.
Yeah, yeah,
It
correct,
always takes
correct.
place in the middle of the year.
June, right? June,
Yeah.
yes,
And
yes,
so if
correct.
you look at the squad in this Uruguay team, couple of several names like Marcelo Zalaeta, Nicolas Oliveira, Fabian Coelho, these were players that actually took part in the Under 20 World Cup in Malaysia just a few months earlier.
Mm. Oh yeah.
Now, so now they
Oh, also
were,
'97. Yes.
yeah, so now they were slotting into the senior team lah. I think
Mm,
maybe it's just part of Uruguay's rebuilding process of after missing out two consecutive World Cup. They needed
mm,
to rebuild their squad. I suppose that's why they look into this new generation of players.
mm. Okay. Now the next one, '99. Do you have much memories about that?
I think this was to me
Mexico.
is the first time ever whereby in Malaysia we had a full coverage. I think we had quite a lot of the games. Unfortunately, because it was held in Mexico, which tells you how challenging it was the timing to watch some of these games lah. Some of
Mm,
these games were in the morning, whereby at that time I was still schooling. I was in Form Six. I'm not too sure how you decide how to describe Form Six in from the Singaporean context. It's just
yeah.
basically after high school.
Form six will be junior college in Singapore.
Probably,
So
yeah, probably some,
doing your A
yeah,
levels.
yeah,
Yeah.
something similar. So this was quite a very interesting summer to be in fact. I mean, 99, of course, you as a United fan, you're having that hangover from the
Yeah.
treble winning season. And then shortly after that, we had the Copa America. And
Yeah.
shortly
I
after
remember the
that,
Copa America.
yeah, and shortly after the Copa America, we had the Confederation Cup. So it was a very interesting time.
Mm.
Interesting to see that you have two major, it was possible to have these two major football tournaments taking place in the same summer when
Back to back.
in today's context, it might be a bit difficult.
Yeah.
But what I remember is Brazil, they did not send a very full strength squad. I think only a very few names from the Copa America winning squad took part here. One of them, of course, is Ronaldinho. Ronaldinho is the player that I think featured heavily this time around.
Mm.
The team captain was not Cafu. It was, I'm trying to recall his name. I remember he was a Bayer Leverkusen player during that era.
Mm. It wasn't, I'm sure it wasn't Lucio.
No, 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 it wasn't Lucio. It was a midfielder.
Okay. Let's see who is it. But never mind, carry on while I'm searching.
But of course, I think this is one of the major I mean, the focal point is Mexico's performance in this tournament. I mean,
Emerson.
this
Emerson was the
Emerson,
captain.
yes, correct. That's the name. I think for Mexico, the fact that they really showed what a quality team they were in '98, and I think
Yes,
'99 they really went far in the Copa America. I think they finished third or fourth.
correct.
So I believe this tournament, since it's held at home, it was their time to take things one notch above by winning something on international football level. We all know they're dominant in their region, but this is the first time ever. I think they wanted to win something on a global scale.
Mm. Talking about Mexico, I've always got a soft spot for them from I think the first time I saw them in '94. From that time, I've had a soft spot for them. I find it the way they sing their national anthem is really cool,
Mm-hmm.
really iconic with their hands across the chest. And yeah, you mentioned it very well now about '98. They were really impressive in that tournament. 94, they were okay, not bad. I didn't expect them to be that good, but they were. And but 98, I think they took it up to the next level with the Cuauhtemoc Blanco and Luis Hernandez partnership.
Mhm.
And 99 Copa America, I remember very well. I watched most of the games on Malaysian TV. And Mexico did very well, as you mentioned. But this Confederations Cup, I don't think we managed to watch it here in Singapore. So I missed it. But of course, I did follow up on its progress and how it was going. And quite happy that Mexico won it. It's a change, right? Always the same old Brazil winning the tournament. Rather, have someone else win it. So it's a good change, I felt. And really glad for Mexico that they won the tournament. And Ronaldinho already, I think, he in '99 Copa America, I think then that's where I first saw Ronaldinho and his magic and what he was capable of. So that was there. And but this one, I think there he was probably playing like a supporting role in the '99 Copa
Yeah.
America. But this one, I think he took the main role because there's no Ronaldo. Ronaldo wasn't in this tournament. Moving on to 2001. One more thing before we move on to 2001. In the 90s, there were Asian teams that took part in these different editions of the Copa America, either as hosts or champions of their continent. But in almost every edition, I think Asian teams were left far behind. Whenever they played one of the big guns, they got hammered and hammered good. So they were always left behind. And I think this was probably in this tournament that was further amplified this point that Asian football is far away from European football, from South American football, even African football. Asian football is far away from that. And things change now. When we talk about the Northeast, things started changing for Asian football. So 2001,
But before you go to 2001, let's remember 99 Saudi Arabia went far.
yeah, they went far, but they got hammered in the final.
They
8-2,
in the final, in the semi-final, they lost
semi-final, yeah.
to Brazil 8-2.
Yeah.
But I remember watching this game. And the most outstanding part is that when Brazil were winning 2-0, they actually came back to draw 2-2.
Oh,
And
okay.
then so at one point they actually held Brazil to a 2-all draw, and then of course the floodgates opened lah. Further six
Yeah.
goal came in. And bear in mind, they started the tournament also on a very bad result because they lost to Mexico as the host team 5-1.
Mm.
Then they drew with Bolivia 0-0. In their last game against Egypt, I believe Egypt is the Cup of Nations winner. They hammered them 5-1. That's how they made it to the semi-final.
Saudi Arabia also, I think in the 90s were probably the most impressive Asian team because of what they did in USA 94. That was outstanding. But they never managed to reach the heights of 94 ever again. This probably will come close in 99 Confederations Cup.
Yep.
So 2001 Confederations Cup, now held closer to our homes in Japan, South Korea. This is, I think, the first time now this tournament has become a rehearsal for the World Cup the following year. And now you got a new dominant force, France. Your memories,
We didn't have that many.
matches,
Not to the
right?
to the best of my knowledge, maybe it was available on satellite TV, which I never had at that time. But as far
Mm.
as when it comes to prime time channels, there was no, not to the best of my knowledge, there was no live telecast. So I really didn't watch any of the games here, but followed it closely through other means as possible. And
Yeah,
I believe that France did not really send a very strong team. Quite a
yeah,
lot of, I would say, new faces. I think they gave chance for a lot of domestic-based players to, see what they can improve themselves.
yeah. Somewhat of
And
the B squad, lah. Yeah.
yeah. I when I look at it, I mean, of course, yes, Patrick Vieira was there, Pires was there, but I look at other players like Silvan Wiltord,
Mm.
okay, and I'm not bad. I think that there's also, I think, what was the guy named Stephen Mahler. So
If
you
knowledge,
see
yeah,
quite a lot of new names, and they did pretty good for themselves by, of course, winning the overall tournament, and thus becoming, if I'm not mistaken, for the first time, a national team that has become the world champion. They were world champion in '98. They were continental champion in 2000, winning the Euros, and
yeah.
now they are intercontinental title. So they hold three different segment of international football titles at the same time.
Yes, correct, correct. You're right. So this was a time where France football from 98 where they were somewhat underdogs in the final and they won the final quite comprehensively in the end, but I guess nobody thought they would win it this comprehensively in the final or even get to the final and win it after what has happened before 98 to French football and the French national team.
Mm-hmm.
To go there and win it in 98 is like you probably like unlocked them. They became more confident and then they started playing better. They dominated. They won the Euro 2000 heartbreakingly for me. And then you talk about Sylvain Wiltord, he scored in that final.
Mm-hmm.
And then now they won this one with a virtually B team. But I think the most impressive thing was about this tournament was the emergence of Japan, Hidetoshi Nakata shining for Japan. I believe at this point in time he was already playing in Serie A for Perugia.
I think it was already a Roma player.
He was a
Just
Roma player. Huh?
just came back from the season of
Yes, you are right. You are right. He was already a Roma player, so he was already in Serie A, which was the best league in at that time for a number of seasons. He joined Perugia in '98. So yeah, at that point in time, yes, he was in Roma, and this was the season where Roma would end the season as champion. So he was gonna be a Scudetto champion at the end of this tournament, which was in January, if I'm not wrong. So for the first time now, Asian football has stood up on an international level to say that we're no longer whipping boys. You can't just hammer us anymore. And that after that, what happened a year later, in although in some dubious circumstances for South Korea, but it showed again, no, Asian football is up there again.
yeah. Japan, I think, okay, la, in a sense that reaching the final, putting up a very respectable fight against France. And of course, even in the group stage, they managed to held Brazil to a goalless draw, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yes.
A Brazil team that was in the middle of going through a bit of a crisis of their own.
Hmm.
Because surprisingly, even though when they won the Copa America in 99, they reached the Confederation Cup final, we had the impression that that this Brazil generation could go and achieve far more things. But as the new millennium started, we start to see that they were going through a string of very poor results. I think they did quite badly in the Copa, and they only were able to send also a very second string players. Uh, Sonny
The,
Anderson
the Copa in 2001 was a bit controversial. There were teams that want to take part, didn't want to take part.
yeah,
Some political
yep,
issue in Colombia.
correct. Yes, that's the addition.
And I don't think they
So
sent the best team in 2001.
no, I mean, we look at the lineup here. The number 9 is Sonny Anderson. Sonny Anderson, number
Yeah.
9 at that time. I
Like,
mean,
yeah,
he was
from
quite he was a decent striker. He did
yeah,
pretty well at Barcelona and all that. But I think
yeah.
obviously he was already in the pecking order when you have players like Ronaldo and Mario Jardel, Giovanni Elber, and all that.
Hmm.
So I think that's why they gave a run out for some of other players. But they did had some players, some interesting names, including Ed Milson. Of course, Lucio is there, Dida is
Zero is
there. I
there.
think quite a few
Yeah.
names that I think
Zé Roberto. Yeah.
haven't yet arrived at the scene, but we will start to see more of them in the years to come.
Yeah. A year later, actually,
Mm.
some of these players like Lucio was there, was the main part of Brazil's 2002 winning World Cup squad. Say Roberto.
Yeah.
So indeed, this time now, the new millennium belong to France, and Asian football has woken up. So going to 2003 in France, do you know why this tournament was in France?
I'm trying to think. I don't really know. Was there any a very specific reason? I suppose maybe France being the reigning Euro champion and all that, maybe they would have thought, why not give them a run? Or maybe because they have the facilities, they were quite much better prepared than most other nations. But
Mhm.
really, I do not know what's the actual story behind it, lah. But I suppose
Also, at this point, we have to mention that the Confederations Cup was being held every 2 years, so it's not necessarily going to be held before the World Cup all the time.
yeah,
So, therefore,
this was
2003 was still about 3 more years before the next World Cup.
this was the last edition where it will be held in this manner.
Yes.
because the next edition in 2005 will start to serve as the dress rehearsal for the World Cup. So in
Mm,
2003 was the last time it was considered held on a every 2 years once lah.
mm. Your memories of this tournament?
To be honest, not much of the football, but more on the tragic of this tournament, which
Yes.
is the passing of Mark Vivian Foe.
Yeah.
Uh, I remember reading about it in the news, and I think it was an early morning kickoff game. So as I was getting ready to go to work, my dad at that time, by this time we already had satellite TV, a 24-hour satellite TV. So my dad, being a retiree at home, will watch the news all around as and when possible. So I remember, he gets up quite earlier just to make sure that all of us are also waking up, getting ready to go for our daily task. And so he will watch the news. And I remember that's the time when I was catching it, like something bad has happened. And this is when I found out that Mark Vivian Foe has died. And at the moment, I was thinking maybe he died because of some tackle, something to do with an action in the field.
Oh,
But
yeah.
that's when I found out that it has to do with his heart problem.
Cardiac arrest. Yes.
Yeah, a problem that will reoccur in football far too often, and I think even till today, given the fact that this happened in 2003, which is like 12 years ago. 22 years ago, and we already had few incidents of this. I think we still don't have a very strong or very valid answer on the cause of this and how can we actually even try to prevent it from happening.
Yeah. It was really tragic because the news broke like you mentioned, the news broke, I believe, in the newspaper or something. I caught it, and you just can't believe this was probably the first time you've ever heard of something like that. I ever heard of something like that
Mm.
happening
Yep.
to a big player, big name player on a international in an international tournament, in an international match. And well, it was really tragic, and you could just feel it. You could just sense it, even though we weren't able to watch the games, but you could just sense it that the atmosphere just became very heavy. And I believe leading up to the final, the teams there was a consideration to not play the final at all,
Mm.
in out of respect for Mark Vivian Foe, but the Cameroon team decided to play on in the final to honor his um, memory. And unfortunately, I mean, it would have been a fairy tale if Cameroon had won.
Yep.
I think, yeah, unfortunately, that didn't follow the script though. So France won. France won it. France didn't read the script, didn't give the game away. But yeah, that was that. And I think the lasting image is that the two captains coming out with a big portrait of Mark Vivian Foe onto the pitch. And then even at the end, once the game was played and won, the celebrations were also quite muted, and both teams joined in the celebrations. I think that was football at its best, I guess, the solidarity of all the footballers in
Yep.
the world
Yep.
towards a fellow professional.
Yep. Some of the French national team players who were teammates with him at
Yeah.
Lyon, I think they broke down in tears. And I think even when this incident happened, I believe the news also, because the news went around throughout the world. And I
Mm,
think at that time, I think was it Kevin Keegan or somebody, I can't remember. It was a Premier League manager who had managed Mark Vivian Foe in England at that time, also
mm,
broke down in tears when he found out the news during the game. While the
mm.
game was going on, when he was on the touchline, when he found out the news about this happened, he broke down in tears. I can't recall who's the manager name, but it was
Okay.
definitely someone that has managed Mark Vivian Foe at club level.
Mark Vivian Foe was a Man City player at that point of time.
Yep. So
And this incident you're speaking about, did it happen because this tournament was played during the off season for
mhm.
the Premier League and all that? So when did this exactly happen?
You mean this tournament?
The incident of the manager breaking down in tears. Was it during on a commentary duties or punditry?
I not too sure whether it was a punditry or not, lah, but it definitely took place in the semi-final against Colombia. That was when it happened. So That's it took place, of course, in the close season because 2003 there was no football action taking place. There was no other major tournament, so it took place during that time, lah. So I
Mm,
believe that okay, then I believe that it wasn't really during the game, but a Premier League manager probably at the time when he was commentating the game or being a punditry, I think it was Kevin Keegan, if I'm not mistaken.
could
He
be,
broke
could
down
be.
in tears. He
Mm,
broke down in tears while doing a commentary on this game because that
yeah.
was his player, a player that he had managed before at club level.
Mm. And also very interesting the in the follow up of this tournament. I mean, aside from all the tragedy, Cameroon, as a nation, as a footballing nation, I think they were having a golden period as well. They won the Olympic gold medal in 2000. I believe they might have won the African Cup of Nations in this period.
Yes, they were the Cup of Nation winners in 2002.
Okay,
Back
there
to
you
back,
go.
huh? Back to back because they won it in 2000 also.
So there you go. So a golden period for Cameroonian football. They disappointed. I feel they disappointed in World Cup 2002. Didn't do
Yeah.
as well as we expected them to
Yep.
do. Maybe got to do with their shirts and
They did well in
the lack of sleeves.
they did well in the first 45 minutes against Ireland.
Yes,
The second half, that's when everything started to go wrong a bit for them.
yeah. And this tournament again, they did quite well to go all the way to the final. But there's also another nation that from 2002 was created a lot of waves.
Mm-mm.
Underdogs did
Turkey.
very well, and that's the Turkish national team. Followed it up very well in this tournament. Went to the third and fourth. I believe they finished third in the tournament.
Yep, they did.
Yes, they did finish third in the tournament. So Turkish football also on the rise. I don't know whether you remember or not, but at one point of time in the 90s, they were the whipping boys of European football. So whenever any team played them in the qualifiers, they tend to like hammer them. I remember England playing them a few times
Mm-hmm.
and they got hammered by England. And then slowly, I believe they changed and they got better.
A lot of it has to do, I think, during the mid 90s when there was a resurgence in Turkish football.
Hmm.
Partly due to the fact I think a generation of players have come of age that qualified for the Euro 96. And they
Hmm.
also had a very good string of quality managers, Fatih
Yes.
Terim being one of them. And this was also the era where Turkish football clubs started to perform strongly in Europe,
Yeah.
with Galatasaray winning the UEFA Cup in 2000.
And the UEFA Super Cup beating Real Madrid.
Mm. So it was the time. It was all about timing lah for Turkish football. But I remember, yes, I remember looking through the qualifiers during the early 90s and the 80s. Quite often, Turkey was always on the lower end of the groups, and getting hammering from England and all that. All.
Yes. Now moving on to this next tournament. I don't know. Your memories might be very bitter about this tournament. Germany 2005. Now, this is the first time that the tournament will become a precursor to the World Cup, the rehearsal. This one I do remember vaguely watching these games. And Germany was coming through a period where they were had some horrendous years after winning the Euro 96. They had an aging squad. They didn't have a very good generation coming up to replace these players that were legends that were aging, unfortunately. But so their conveyor belt has sort of stopped. They didn't have good generation, but somehow they managed to made it to the 2002 World Cup final, which is a miracle. And they never managed to keep up to that or improve on that. So here they are, a brand new Germany, a new generation of talented players led
And
by
a
a
new style.
legend.
And they're slowly
Pardon?
implementing a new style of play.
Yes, a new style as well, and led by a legend. They were impressive. They were a very impressive team. They impressed. A very different style of Germany, as you've mentioned. But of course, it was still very much in transition and still work in progress.
Yep.
But still, Germany was impressive. The final, Brazil against Argentina. This is a series of what, two, three finals in a row where these two big nations would face in a international tournament final.
I think even during that time, these two teams will be playing each other for a couple of times during that summer. Of course, this one was a bittersweet to us, but we did beat them in the World Cup qualifier 3-1. If you
Mm.
can watch that goal, it's a superb goal from Riquelme. But honestly, this Brazil team, the scary thing about this Brazil team was not about Ronaldinho, was not about Ronaldo. Was that there's another guy there called Adriano.
Yes.
He, even as an Argentina fan, till to this day, he gives me a nightmare. I mean, he's definitely that, I would say, that last deadly predator, that Brazilian striker with a monster and a killer instinct when it comes to having the ball on his feet. I don't think we have seen any players of that mold of a Brazilian player in a long time. I mean, of course, we've seen the dribbling, the flash skill type of players like Neymar and all that would come. But in terms of the predatory style, the lethal instinct, that kind of players, that number nine player, I think he was that last of that generation that really that produced this type of players lah.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It was a scary team as well. I mean, you talk about only Adriano, Robinho also in great form. He was those flair, typical Brazilian dribbling, step over kind of guy.
yeah.
Kaká was also on form. He was emerging as one of the best in the world in his position. That Ronaldinho was still there. Ronaldo was there and thereabouts. So, can imagine that the
You know,
Brazil
there,
team full of
something interesting about the first game in this group, which is Brazil versus Greece. You know,
Mhm.
Greece 1 year earlier won the Euro, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
And in after winning the Euro, when they traveled back to Greece, I think they had a celebration in this place where the first Olympic was held. I can't remember what is the name of this place. It's not really the Colosseum, but it's something like their version of a Colosseum. Like it's an old, ancient, proper building, and the fans were gathering there to welcome the team back. There was an interesting banner that was in Greek. If you translate it, means "Let Brazil come." That was the confidence of the Greek football fans at that time. It's like now after winning this, we can beat anybody in this world. So in this tournament, if you look at it, I think they got a real wake up call, especially when the goal that Adriano scored against them. One
Yeah,
heck of
what
a goal.
hell?
One heck of
Yeah,
a goal. Yeah. So
correct. That was bombastic goal that one.
yeah.
And I think the place you're talking about is called Olympia
Mm,
in Greece.
yeah. And
Um, yeah, yeah.
another
Continue.
interesting topic thing, because this is something I just picked up recently, also have to do with what is going on currently now in Malaysia. The first game Argentina played was against Tunisia. Tunisia was a couple of nations champions in 2004. If you look at their lineup there, I think a couple of Brazilian players. I think the left back is called Clayton, and they have a striker by the name of Santos. Um, while watching the game, of course, Argentina won the game, but we were chatting with the guys. I remember telling them, it'll be nice to have a couple of Argentinians to shoot up for Malaysia one day. Just, a very gist conversation. Of course, at that time, it was never going to happen because the football, the leadership in Malaysia at that time, this was not something they were really going to explore, and it was definitely a no-no lah to the idea of naturalized football players. But here we are in 2025, 20 years later, in the recent match when Malaysia beat Vietnam 4-0, not one but three Argentinian football
Argentina.
players were naturalized because apparently they have ties to Malaysia, which is still a mystery to most football fans. We are trying to find out exactly how does this work. Because, honestly, as an Argentinian fan, I never crossed to me that there were that many Malaysians that went over there. Going
Uh,
to South America is not really as easy as you think it is, because if you look at, it's easy to see Malaysians in the US or in Europe, in Japan. It's easy to see that happening.
Especially in England, UK, easy to
Yeah, yeah, it's easy to see that
because
happening.
of the colonial ties. Yeah.
Correct, correct. But no, now it seems like they've managed to find more than 3 dozen of players, which really surprises me. So, that's one of the things I wanted to share lah, about what something to do with this edition of the Confederation Cup.
Okay. And the final, of course, won devastatingly by Brazil, but Argentina, on the Argentina perspective, wasn't the best Argentinian squad. Do you feel that they didn't feel their best squad available?
I wouldn't say it wasn't the best squad, but I also think it's a bit of a transition period.
Mm,
Bielsa left about a few months or maybe a year earlier. So Jose Peckerman has come in, taking over the national team. And I think he's trying to find that balance of the lineup that he wants. So it
mm.
was still kind of like a work in progress. But of course, it was devastating. And to make things interesting, I missed the first half. And so when I woke up to watch the second half, the score line, I was like, man, I should have just gone back to sleep, I guess. Yeah.
Now going to the last Confederations Cup of the Northeast. This one I had a vested interest in it because Italy were, for the first time ever in my lifetime, involved in a Confederations Cup. Wasn't a very good tournament for Italy. Only the first game was something to shout about. They had the ugliest kids around, but I know that it was in memory of some I don't know 100 plus years of the founding of Italian Football Federation. So they
Mm-hmm.
had those kind of old school kids in ode to those days.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, but this was an Italy team that was, I know since winning the World Cup in 2006, that's the best most of them could get because they were all getting on in age. Not many, in fact, when you see the players that won the World Cup in 2006, the especially the ones in the first team, after 2006, not many could live up to the heights of that tournament because, again, getting on in age. Not many managed to do that. And then, of course, this Italy team had one bright spot called Giuseppe Rossi. And
Mm-hmm.
this was Italy was now in this period where, like Germany, there's a talent drain, not enough talented players coming through to replace the previous generations. And they were really struggling to get young players. So that this guy, Giuseppe Rossi, came on the scene. He was doing well and in Spanish football after moving out from Manchester United, and he was the bright spot, but unfortunately only lasted one game. Didn't manage to, actually I had trouble watching this game, and this was one of the first times where I had was introduced to streaming to watch matches. Wasn't a good experience because all the buffering. First, you had to go and find the link. It's so difficult to find a link that was working. Well, a lot of times you might find something that is dodgy or spammy, and then when you finally find something, okay, you manage to watch it, and then suddenly there's some buffering, and oh, it's just such an irritating experience because it wasn't shown on TV. That's the unfortunate part. But Italy aside, the Vuvuzela, this was the tournament I first heard of
Yep.
the Vuvuzela, this buzzing sound of the Vuvuzela. Your memories, do you manage to watch the tournament?
Yeah, I did watch. Not to say thoroughly, but I did remember watching a few games. One of the teams that I took a bit of interest is, of course, the Iraq team after winning
Iraq, yeah.
their magical run in 2007 of the AFC Asian Cup. And I was thinking, let's see how well they will do here. And to their credit, I think they didn't do quite. I think they do quite bad. I think in a way, they played the spoiler role of that group because by defeating Italy, they pretty much opened the doors for every other team to also qualify to the next round, which I
No,
think
they
the
were not
US.
in Italy's group. They were in
Oh, sorry,
Spain's group.
sorry. Oh,
Italy's
sorry,
group was
sorry.
Egypt.
Oh, sorry, sorry. Okay, okay. The team that played the spoiler was Egypt. Sorry. So
Yeah.
yeah. So in the context of Iraq, they didn't do quite well. I mean, they drew with South Africa. They lost narrowly to Spain and all that, and they managed to even gain another point against New Zealand. So considering that against the reigning European champion, they did manage to lose by a single goal. I think it was quite a very credible result on their part, lah. And the other
Mm.
team, of course, as I mentioned, is Egypt. As I wanted to mention Egypt because one of the things about Egypt national team during that era, they were going through this very golden era. I think they won
Mm.
like a very 2 or 3 Cup of Nations in a row.
Yeah.
But the team was
They
couldn't
always
make it
fail
to
to
the World
qualify
Cup.
for the World Cup.
Yes, exactly. So this edition in 2009 was probably one of those chances that we could see them on a global scale to see how good they were. And like I mentioned, they played a spoiler role by automatically defeating Italy. They pretty much opened the entire group for anybody to make it through the next stage, and that's where US national team capitalized on it.
Yeah, and the Americans. Made it to the semi-final, made it to the final. In fact, yeah, quite credible. I was quite happy that they managed to beat Spain in the semi-final because Spain was also on that dominant run where they were winning. Let's see, they were already the European champions leading to this tournament, and then they will win the World Cup a year after. So they're already on this dominant run. They've got that confidence of having broken the duck of winning a international tournament after a long time. But now they had confidence. Their club sides were doing very well in European football. So everyone was going Spain, 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 and there was a lot of hype on the Spanish team. So it was really great to see an underdog winning against them, the Americans. And they actually gave Brazil a fright in the final, leading 2-0 in the first half, only to lose 3-2. And as you mentioned, I think Brazil probably the overall record holders for the Confederations Cup.
Yep. I think this is going to be their third title. Of course, they will win the next edition as well on home soil in 2013. And an interesting note for this tournament is that because the national team is managed by Dunga,
Mm.
who would be I think to my knowledge, he will be the only player to do so both as a player and a coach. He won it as a player in 1997. So in this edition, he'll win it as the manager of the Brazil national team.
Yeah, nice. Okay, that one I didn't know. But I think one thing very interesting to note and something we need to share with our listeners and viewers is the winners of the Confederations Cup is cursed.
Yes.
It's a curse to win the Confederations Cup because you will not win the World Cup after that.
Yep. True. True.
None of the winners of the Confederations Cup have gone on to win the World Cup.
Yes, it hasn't happened. Never happened before. In fact,
Never ever
yeah,
happened because
never
there's no
happened.
more. Yeah, no more Confederations Cup.
Yep. Because 2013 Brazil won, they didn't win in 2014. 2017 was won by Germany, is it? So, yeah.
Yeah, correct.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think you're right. The Brazil Confederations Cup, I think, was quite exciting. Again, I had vested interest because Italy were back in there, but quite a number of games that were very open, a lot of goals. I remember Japan doing very well also in this tournament in the Brazil edition.
Yep. And like what you mentioned earlier, 2009 will be sort of like the introduction of the Vuvuzela to the entire world. It will give people an idea of what to expect when the World Cup starts in South Africa in 2010.
Yeah.
Although quite interesting in it, I heard from, I can't remember where I read it or listened to a podcast. The Vuvuzela was never really a prominent, it was never a prominent thing that existed in South African football. It only came to light probably in the years that just after when they got the World Cup hosting right. So
Mm.
for the most part of the history, it never really existed, never really played a part in their football culture.
Okay.
But of course, for in the context of what we're going to talk about in 2009 and of course 2010, this is the one that will take centerpiece. I don't think that you can ever imagine any World Cup match or any football match from the 2009 Confederation Cup or the 2010 FIFA World Cup without
Without
having
the
that
sound.
sound running in the background.
What's your opinion? Are you a fan of it or no?
I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm a fan of it, but if it is true, it's part of a certain country's football culture, and then they are allowed and they are hosting the World Cup. I think that we have to respect it, lah.
Yeah, of course.
I wouldn't encourage it that other nations that have nothing, that has no relation to it,
To adopt
to
it.
to adopt it. No, just leave it as it is where it is, and figure out of your own what you can bring in to show. Like if let's say tomorrow, if we're gonna have a World Cup in Southeast Asia, let's not try to adopt the Vuvuzela, or let's try to adopt something uniquely of our own, so that when people
Yeah.
remember the World Cup, they'll remember us for what we bring to the table.
Yes. True. Hopefully one day, yeah, World Cup in Saudi Arabia could be something.
Yep.
Anyways, that brings us to the end of our recap of the Confederations Cup from the 90s and the noughties. If you're listening to this, you're watching this, you've got any memories of your own or any interesting snippets, any interesting facts that you know of any of the tournaments that we shared about here, do share with us in the comment section. Let us know what your memories are, what your thoughts are, anything that we've missed out on. You know, please feel free to share with us because this is, after all, this is a very discussion based, conversational kind of an episode that we've just done. And it's been a long time, Sivan.
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully, to many more collaborations in the future.
Yeah.
Let's think of
Just
other
just to
things that we've missed out.
just to let you know that I've so far enjoyed all the Back Pass with Russ episodes, especially
Thank you.
when you bring in all your guests from the Singapore ex-Singapore national team players, and
Mhm.
because including there was one former Thai player that used to
Yeah,
play in the
yeah.
Singapore S League. So yeah, I really
Exactly.
enjoyed most of the episode. The Dazzler Fundies episode, all the Singapore team all the key players that won the F Suzuki Cups in the Northeast era. Truly enjoyable to listen to all those episodes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hopefully get more legends down for you for your listening pleasure.
Agu Kasmir.
Yeah, the guy's a bit of a MIA. That's
Okay,
what I've
okay.
heard.
Oh, I see, I see.
The last located in the US.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so not sure where is he now. But yeah, if he does come in the scene again, who knows? Possible. Let's see. Who knows? Maybe sometimes it's about a matter of finding the right person who is close to him and see if he wants to have his voice heard again.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right, Sivan, thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Ras, for having me. Thanks.
Welcome. My pleasure. And this is me, Ras, signing out. Cheers.